Chapter 1. Legacy. From the outside, Ashbridge Global looked like any other high-rise corporate empire: polished glass walls, sleek branding, a lobby that smelled like mahogany and money. But to me, it was more than just a building. It was my inheritance, my upbringing, my battleground. My father built this company from nothing. He started out hauling freight in a second-hand truck, made his first million managing supply chains for niche manufacturers, and grew Ashbridge into an international logistics powerhouse. He wore success like a second skin, unapologetically tough, brutally honest, and allergic to excuses. Growing up, I spent most of my time in this building, shadowing him from boardrooms to warehouse floors. My older brother Daniel and I were raised with the same expectations, but in very different ways. He was groomed for leadership from the moment he could walk. I was told to earn everything I wanted. Daniel was everything people expected a CEO's son to be: confident, charming, and always talking like he already had the job. Even as teenagers, the difference between us was clear. He was a natural in a tuxedo, always hosting parties, always the center of attention. I preferred spreadsheets and silence. Not because I lacked ambition, but because I believed legacy wasn't something inherited, it was something proven. When I graduated with my MBA, I came back to the company with no illusions. I didn't want special treatment. I wanted to climb from the bottom, understand every gear of the machine. My father agreed. So I worked my way up. I rotated through departments, learned from warehouse supervisors, sat with analysts, negotiated with freight managers. I stayed late, listened more than I spoke, and took notes on everything. That's when I met Julia. She was fresh out of grad school and joined the marketing team with a spark in her and a resume packed with international internships. On her first day, she spilled a glass of red wine on my shirt at a corporate mixer. She was mortified. I laughed. "I'll buy you a new shirt," she said, cheeks flushed. "How about a coffee instead?" I offered. That coffee turned into lunch, then dinner, then weekends at my place. Julia was sharp, witty, always 2 steps ahead in conversations, and she challenged me. We talked for hours about our dreams, ambitions, what we wanted our lives to look like. She didn't care that I was the owner's son, or so she said, at least back then. Chapter 2. The Crown and the Knife. 2 years passed. Julia and I were inseparable, both inside and outside the office. She moved in with me, brought life into my usually quiet apartment. Candles, paintings, a vintage record player. We'd sit on the couch at night, her head on my shoulder, planning a future I thought was certain. Then came the Aspen retreat. It was tradition. Every winter, the top executives and leadership team took a long weekend in Colorado. My father called it strategy in the snow, but mostly it was a chance for deals to be made over brandy and skiing. On the second night, during the formal dinner, my father stood at the head of the table, glass of scotch in hand, and cleared his throat. "I've thought long and hard about the future of Ashbridge," he began, looking around the room at the expectant faces of the company's elite. "And I've come to a decision." My heart thumped in my chest. I didn't think I would be named CEO, not yet, but part of me hoped he would at least acknowledge my efforts. Instead, he turned to Daniel. "Effective next quarter, Daniel will be stepping in as CEO of Ashbridge Global." Polite applause followed. Some people clapped enthusiastically. Others stole glances at me. I forced a smile, nodded, toasted with everyone else. But inside, something cracked. Later that night, Daniel found me out on the balcony, smoking a cigar. "Come on, little brother," he said, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "You didn't really think he'd give it to you, did you?" I exhaled a long stream of smoke. I didn't expect anything. He grinned. "Well, you've always been good at supporting roles. Don't worry, there's plenty of room for you to shine under me." That was Daniel. Even in victory, he couldn't resist twisting the knife. Julia joined me after he walked away. She wrapped her arms around me from behind. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "For what?" I asked bitterly. "For not blowing up, for being the bigger man. You're still the one I admire." But over the next few weeks, I noticed something begin to shift. Julia started working directly with Daniel on a new branding initiative. It made sense. She was one of our top marketers, and he needed fresh eyes to push the company forward. Or at least, that's what I told myself. She came home later and later, smelled like his cologne sometimes, laughed at his jokes in meetings a little too loudly. She called him Dan now, something only close friends and family used. One night, I asked, "You seeing more of him than me these days?" She smiled, didn't miss a beat. "He's the CEO. It's just work, babe." She kissed my cheek and went back to her laptop. I didn't press her, but something in my gut twisted tight and refused to loosen. Chapter 3. Ghost Mode. It happened on a Thursday. I'd left my laptop charger in my office and returned to the building just after 9 p.m. The halls were quiet, only the faint hum of servers and the occasional cleaning staff moving through the lower floors. I took the elevator to the 21st floor, Daniel's new domain. His office lights were on, so was the conference room. I approached slowly, pausing at the frosted glass wall. At first, it was just shadows, then motion, then clarity. "Julia." "Daniel?" His hands were tangled in her hair. She leaned into him, kissed his neck, her eyes closed. His mouth found hers like he'd done it 100 times. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a one-time slip. This had been happening. I didn't barge in. I didn't shout. I didn't collapse. I simply turned and walked away. That night, I sat on my bed for hours, staring into the dark, the taste of betrayal thick on my tongue. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even drink. I went numb. For the next week, I didn't say a word to either of them. Julia acted normal. She texted me during the day, kissed me when she came home, talked about work like nothing had changed. I pretended to. Daniel barely acknowledged me, except in meetings, where he tossed out buzzwords and acted like a visionary. The board nodded, impressed by his charisma. But I saw the cracks. I saw how fast he moved without foundation. How his decisions had no data to back them. How he put style over substance. And I saw Julia standing behind him in presentations, smiling like the perfect accessory. They thought they were winning, so I let them. While they bathed in borrowed glory, I got to work. I started fixing the things they overlooked: client complaints, broken processes, over-budget campaigns. I pulled data reports late at night, met with department heads one-on-one. Quietly, consistently, I made things better. My father noticed. "You've been quiet lately," he said during a late dinner. "But your numbers, they're loud." I shrugged. "Just doing my job." He leaned forward. "Keep doing it. Watch your brother. Watch everything." Chapter 4. The fall begins. Daniel always knew how to fill a room. When he entered, conversations paused, heads turned, and attention clung to him like static. He was smooth, magnetic, but shallow. As the weeks went on, his shine began to dull. It started subtly. A missed client call here, a late quarterly report there. He approved a risky acquisition without properly vetting the vendor, and the deal went south, costing us nearly $2 million. But he brushed it off with a grin and a speech about calculated risks. The board murmured, but no one acted. He was, after all, the eldest Ashbridge son, the chosen one. Julia stood by him through it all, backing his decisions, spinning damage into rebranding opportunities. I watched her rehearse her speeches before meetings. She was good, too good. Her loyalty to him was no longer just romantic, it was strategic. She was tying her future to his, betting on his name, his status. One day, I overheard them in the executive lounge. "Daniel, once we go public, I'll appoint you VP of Strategy. We'll run this together." "Julia, you promise?" "Daniel, baby, who else would I trust? You're not just a fling to me. Double quotes. I walked away before I heard the rest. It wasn't heartbreak anymore, it was an insult. They weren't just cheating on me. They were using me as the quiet brother, the stepping stone beneath their ambitions, and they thought I'd stay quiet forever. Chapter 5. Quiet Storm. A storm doesn't announce itself with thunder, it gathers quietly. While Daniel and Julia flaunted their power, I became invisible on purpose. I let them think I was broken. I let them think I had accepted my place in their shadow. But every night, I studied our financials, vendor contracts, operational workflows. I found the weak points, the unpaid invoices, the backlogged accounts, the managers afraid to speak up. I visited our logistics hubs across the country, met the night shift workers, asked them what wasn't working. I kept receipts, built a quiet army. When Daniel's pet projects started bleeding money, I offered small solutions behind the scenes, efficiencies that kept things from completely falling apart. Executives started coming to me directly for guidance. The board took notice. My father called me into his office one evening. He sat at his desk, no smile, no pleasantries. "You know your brother's not built for this, don't you?" I didn't answer. He leaned forward. "Neither of you knew I was watching, but I've seen what's happening. You've been holding this company together from the shadows." I still said nothing. I built Ashbridge to outlast me. If I hand it to the wrong son, I lose everything I built. I finally spoke. "Then maybe it's time to stop trusting bloodlines and start trusting merit." He looked at me for a long time, then nodded. "I want a full report on Daniel's tenure. Leave nothing out." I handed it over the next morning. 60 pages. Every error, every misstep, every time I'd cleaned up the mess. Within a week, my father scheduled an emergency board meeting. Chapter 6. The Reckoning. The tension in the boardroom could have shattered glass. Daniel sat at the head of the long mahogany table, leaning back with an air of forced confidence. Julia was beside him, her tablet in hand, but her eyes darted between the board members nervously. She could feel something was wrong. She wasn't used to being on the back foot. The only sound was the tick-tick of the antique wall clock before our father, James Ashbridge, stood at the front of the room, holding a thick binder in his weathered hands. "I've called this meeting," he began, his voice slow but sharp, "because we have a crisis. Not just financial, a crisis of leadership." Daniel cleared his throat with that infuriating smirk. "If this is about the third quarter projections, it's about your complete incompetence," our father snapped. The room went silent. He dropped the binder on the table. It hit with a heavy thud. 60 pages. Detailed. Annotated. Every misstep you've made over the past 18 months. Every budget overreach. Every partnership that fell through. Every person you let walk out the door. Daniel's smile wavered. Father continued. "And you want to talk about third quarter projections?" Julia interjected, her tone sharp. "Mr. Ashbridge, with all due respect, Daniel and I made decisions in good faith. The economy is volatile." "Don't insult this board's intelligence," he cut in. "I've sat in this chair for 35 years. I know a sinking ship when I see one. And you two are steering it straight into the rocks." I sat at the far end, silent, watching. Daniel looked around, desperate for support, but the eyes that once clung to his charm now flicked to the binder instead. The facts were too loud. Even his allies had gone quiet. Our father turned to the board. "The only reason this company hasn't collapsed is because someone else has been quietly cleaning up Daniel's messes." He gestured to me. "I propose a vote. Immediate removal of Daniel as CEO. Appointment of my youngest son in his place." Daniel stood, fists clenched. "You're replacing me with him. He's barely said a word in meetings." "Exactly," our father growled. "He talks less, works more." The vote happened quickly. 9 in favor, 1 abstained. Julia. She looked at Daniel, who stared at her with betrayal in his eyes. "You abstained," he muttered. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. After the meeting, Daniel stormed out without a word. The once glorious CEO reduced to silence. Julia lingered. Her eyes met mine across the room, clouded with something new, not fear, regret. Chapter 7. Aftermath. The next few days were a blur of change. My office moved, my title changed, and people changed with it. I was now CEO. There was no celebration. No cake, just quiet respect. And then came Julia. She showed up unannounced, standing in the doorway of my new office like a ghost from a past life. I didn't ask her in, she entered anyway. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back, her eyes red-rimmed, and for the first time in years, she looked like Julia, before the ambition, before the calculated smiles. "I had to see you," she said. I leaned back in my chair. "Go ahead." She shut the door and walked in slowly, like the room might collapse if she moved too quickly. "I never wanted it to end like this," she said, her voice trembling. "You mean with you backing the wrong brother?" I asked. No, she said quickly. With me losing you. I didn't respond. She stepped closer, her voice low. I was stupid, blinded. I thought Daniel had the power, the future. I thought you'd never want it, that you'd always stay in his shadow. And that justified sleeping with him. Her lip quivered. No, nothing justifies it. I kept telling myself it wasn't serious. That it didn't mean anything. That you and I were fading. I stood now, facing her across the desk. You didn't fade, I said. You extinguished us. You made a choice. You looked at both brothers and picked the one with the bigger title. Tears streamed down her face now. I thought I could fix it. I thought once Daniel became CEO, I could make it work, help him, guide him, maybe feel something again. But it all fell apart. Her voice cracked. And the whole time, I missed you. She moved closer. Can we try again? It hit me how familiar this scene was, how many times I dreamed she would say those words before I learned the truth. But that dream was gone now, dead and buried. I shook my head. No, I said, we can't. She nodded slowly, as if expecting it, but the pain in her eyes was real. I still love you, she whispered, and I still remember who you chose when I needed you most. She turned to go, but paused at the door. You're not just the better CEO, you were always the better man. I was just too blind to see it. The door clicked shut behind her. I sat in my chair again, breathing out slowly. Power didn't feel like revenge. It felt like clarity. And Julia's tears? They were just echoes of what once was. She traded love for a title. I traded heartbreak for an empire. Chapter 8. One last chance. It was nearly midnight when I got home. The house was dark, the air still. I kicked off my shoes by the door and loosened my tie. The exhaustion wasn't just physical, it was emotional, like I'd spent the whole day carrying the weight of the past on my shoulders. Then I saw her. Julia, sitting on the edge of the couch, hands clasped in her lap, still in the same navy blue suit from earlier. Her eyes were swollen, makeup smudged, and her heels had been discarded on the rug. How did you get in? I asked, my voice low. She looked up slowly. You never changed the code. That silence between us stretched, thick with memories and buried anger. I told you not to come back, I said finally. I know, she said, standing, but I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking this can't be how it ends. It already ended, I replied. You just didn't notice until the title changed. She winced. That's not fair. No, I took a step closer. You looked at me and saw a placeholder, a fallback. And when my brother offered you the illusion of power, you ran to him. I made a mistake, she said quickly, walking toward me. A stupid, reckless mistake. I thought I wanted what he had, status, prestige. But it was empty. He was empty. She reached out, touching my arm. I was wrong. About everything. About him. About you. I didn't see what I had until I lost it. I pulled my arm away. Don't romanticize regret, Julia. You didn't lose me by accident. You gave me away. She looked at me then, truly looked, like she was trying to see past the anger and into the man she used to love. I never stopped loving you, she whispered. I said nothing, because hearing it didn't stir me anymore. Not like it used to. Tears welled up in her eyes again. Please, just one more chance. No Daniel. No games. Just us. Let me prove I can be better. There it was, the confession. The kind people give when they finally realize they've burned the bridge they need most. I spent months asking myself what I did wrong, I said, my voice calm. Was I too quiet, too safe? Did I not fight hard enough for you? I blamed myself, until I realized something. What? She breathed. I never needed to change. You just never valued what didn't come with the spotlight. Her knees buckled slightly, but she caught herself on the arm of the couch, so there's nothing left. I stared at her for a long moment. Part of me searched for the old warmth, the history, but it wasn't there. Just scars. Lessons. No, I said softly, not anymore. A sob escaped her lips, and she turned away, hand over her mouth. I walked past her and opened the door. She turned around slowly. This hurts more than I thought it would. Good, I said gently, because now you know how it felt. She stepped out into the night. I didn't watch her go. I didn't need to. I shut the door, locked it, and for the first time in a long time, felt free. Epilogue. Legacy and letting go. 6 months later, the office looked different now. Not in furniture or paint, but in atmosphere. The weight of dysfunction was gone. Where once there was cautious silence and power plays in every corner, now there was energy, direction, growth. My leadership had paid off. Profits had stabilized. Partnerships flourished. Even the staff, who once whispered in the halls, now greeted each other with genuine confidence. They didn't fear another shakeup. They trusted the ship had finally found its captain, and Julia. She was gone. She resigned 2 weeks after that night. Her resignation letter was short, 2 paragraphs, typed and signed, in ink that still smelled fresh. No dramatics, no last pleas, just the end of her chapter at Ashbridge & Co. Some said she moved abroad. Others whispered about her joining a competitor. I never asked. I didn't need to know. I had peace. Every morning, I arrived an hour earlier than I used to, just to stand at the tall window in my office, coffee in hand, watching the sun spill over the skyline. This place, once the scene of so much hurt and betrayal, now felt like mine. But I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate the fall of Daniel, or the regret in Julia's eyes. I just led. That was my quiet revenge. The board trusted me completely. My father, once weary and disappointed, now looked at me with pride he didn't even try to hide. We met weekly, sometimes about business, sometimes about nothing at all. It was like he had found in me the son he thought he'd lost to silence. And me, I had begun dating again. Nothing serious, not yet, but I smiled more, laughed more. I wasn't carrying the same bruised heart I used to. Julia's memory, once sharp and bitter, had softened. She had become a lesson, a turning point. The betrayal that carved out the space for something greater, something truer. One day, while reviewing project proposals, I found a small envelope tucked into my inbox. No return address, just my name in neat, familiar cursive, Julia. Inside was a single photograph, us. Years ago, smiling on a park bench, hands entwined, happy and untouched by ambition. On the back, just one sentence. I finally understand what I lost. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I placed the photo in my desk drawer, beneath reports, beneath spreadsheets, beneath the future. And I closed it, because that chapter was over. And the man she left behind, he wasn't the CEO. I was.